exciting. That's what made MG the sports car America loved first. MG, still one jump ahead.
Sadly, it doesn't take a parachuting MGB to make any UK petrolhead think that the 1970s British car industry was successful. Sure, a good car may have snuck out of the factory every now and again, but the main gist is simple. The British car industry was a shambles, and today I'm going to be summing up the whole history in under 5 minutes. Ask anybody in the present day to name a British car manufacturer, and the truth is, they'll struggle. Surprising, isn't it? But it's not always been like this. In 1913, there were 140 different car makers in Britain. 140! Today, we have about 4, and even they have foreign strings attached. From 1932 to 1955, Britain was Europe's largest car producer, and in 1946, we were exporting nearly 100,000 cars a year. By contrast, we were merely importing 63. Not 63 makes, just 63 cars. Sounds all very successful, so what went wrong? Why do we barely have any fully functioning British car manufacturers today? Well, it all started with a corporation called British Leyland.
Great cars and a great deal more.
It was formed in 1968 and combined all the British car manufacturers under one roof, under one group. Sounds like a perfectly good idea, but it really wasn't. British Leyland was the world's 5th biggest car firm and offered a wider choice of cars than any manufacturer anywhere.
Leyland cars. Austin, MG, Triumph, Mini, Jaguar, Daimler, Princess, Morris, Rover. All with super cover.
However, because this big business was made up of small companies all striving to be the most successful and fight for the little money that Leyland had, it meant that everyone was against each other and in-house conflict was common. Each individual maker seeked popularity, meaning small towns up and down the UK ended up with 3 dealers within 10 miles of each other. All these British motors couldn't keep up with the foreign competition either. Whilst the Japanese were making elegant, refined and affordable alternatives such as the Datsun 120Y, British Leyland were introducing the seatbelt warning light on their atrocious Princess. There are so many horror stories from Leyland's lifespan it's hard to count, but when talking about one of the corporation's most notorious vehicles, a certain story sums up the whole disarray. Every Vanden Plas 1500 and 1750, which was the attempted rebadging of the hideous Austin Allegro, were delivered to customers with at least 100 miles on their odometers. Turns out they were driven, not transported, to the separate facility where their interiors were fitted, with the driver using a basic dummy seat for the journey. But why couldn't Leyland cars keep up with the foreign competition, and why all the building mishaps? Well, it's simple. Because BL didn't have any money. Ever wondered why the classic Mini shape is so iconic? It's because it lasted for over 40 years. Why? Because British Leyland didn't have enough money to update it fully. And even before Leyland got their hands on the Mini, a cult classic and one of the most popular cars ever, the British Motor Corporation were making a £30 loss on every one they sold. Mix all this in with awful management who blamed the workers for most of the problems, causing them to all go on strike. Nothing really ever got done, and when it did, most of the brown cheese wedges were made by old blokes with hammers. In fact, there were 357 production line stoppages at Leyland's HQ in the first part of 1977 alone. It was shambolic. When Margaret Thatcher came to power in 1979, Leyland really was on its last legs. Throughout the 1980s, she went on to sell the individual parts of it until our country's car industry was no more. Indeed, very few of these parts survive today, and those that do are all under foreign ownership, bearing no resemblance to the British classics. So why is this all so important then? Well, it doesn't just apply to Britain's motor industry, it applies to all our country's industries. During Season 15, Episode 6 of the legendary automotive show Top Gear, the boys paid tribute to British sports cars, and whilst visiting the old Jensen factory, Jeremy Clarkson summed this whole thing up perfectly. So I'll leave you with this.
In the mid-1970s, 26% of the British workforce was employed in some way by the manufacturing sector. Today, it's 9%. It's not that we don't make sports cars anymore, We don't make anything.